This episode of GunBlog VarietyCast brought to you by lawofselfdefense.com. Go to lawofselfdefense.com/variety to learn about your state's self-defense laws. Sign up for one of their online or in-person seminars or buy the book Law of Self-Defense and get 10% off when you use the discount code VARIETY at checkout. That's lawofselfdefense.com/variety.
Sit back, relax, and take a ride with us on the GunBlog VarietyCast, episode 92. Welcome back to the GunBlog VarietyCast. I'm Sean, and I'm joined as always by Adam. How are you doing, Adam?
Barry White is back, baby. Although I'm actually much better now than I was, say, 2 days ago. I really need to move to Arizona, but the wife says I'd be doing that by myself, so I'll stay here and suffer the weather.
Yeah, having met your wife, I think I'd stay and suffer myself. So, we're going to start with a tactical dog and fitness report. 17.8 dog walking miles, but that's because I spent the weekend at gun school.
Gun school!
Yeah, so those who have listened to, I don't know, only dropped on Wednesday, I think. If you haven't listened to it yet, but you listen to this one if you haven't listened to the last one. I don't know. In any case, I went to gun school.
Gun school. I like gun school.
You missed out, Adam.
I really did. But since my surgery, my eye has not been, my right eye, my shooting eye, can't really see much past my fingertips. So gun school would not be very good for me right now.
Cool. Great. Wonderful.
So I was mostly sick all week because we had these wild temperature swings where it was like 85 degrees one day and it was literally 50 degrees the next day, and that was the high. And whenever it does that, it always causes my sinuses to go all Arnold Schwarzenegger in Total Recall, where my brain like tries to, come out of my skull from the expansion.
Oh, that, yeah.
Yeah, that.
I was trying to figure out where you were going with this. Like, are you like that thing where he like pulls the thing out of his nose?
Well, I wasn't thinking of that, but that's a fairly close approximation of how it feels.
Oh, yeah. All right. And now it's time for Blue Collar Prepping with that bratty kid sister of the gun blogosphere, Erin Paulette. This week, Erin answers a question I have about water storage.
Come on, every pony. It's time for Blue Collar Prepping with Erin Paulette.
Erin, we talked before about how I lived in Raleigh, and their system is totally backed up against power failure. Well, I've moved. Now I have to provide for my own freshwater storage. What do you recommend? We now have a garage, so I can store water there. And I bought a water brick, but at $21 for 3.5 gallons, they're really not that economical.
I recall that I already did a segment on water storage back in episode 53. None of that is helpful?
I guess I wasn't clear. I'm asking about the containers themselves. What size and type of container could I get that won't break the bank? You're pretty good at that whole bargain shopper thing. And rather than me just throw money at the problem, is there a cheaper solution?
Okay, first question. Do you own a pool? Because if so, that's thousands of gallons of stored water right there. And assuming you keep the pool covered, filtered, and chlorinated, pool water should be drinkable as is, since most pools are chlorinated between 1 to 3 parts per million, and the EPA has said that up to 4 parts per million of chlorine in water is safe to drink. Now, if you don't want that chlorine taste, a good filter will remove it, and I'd recommend getting a filter anyway, since any disaster where you lose water is likely one where you lose power as well, and that means filtration will become necessary. So filtering and then boiling or pasteurizing your pool water ought to see you through most emergencies. I'd also suggest you keep a supply of powdered chlorine or other pool shock chemicals on hand just to prevent algae growth in the long term, since chlorine does break down pretty rapidly under sunlight.
That's great advice, Erin, but I don't have a pool. And I'm pretty sure if I run next door and siphon water out of the neighbor's pool, it's going to go badly for me.
Yeah, neighbors don't like it when you siphon water from their pool, that's true. All right, this isn't a problem. We just won't do this on easy mode. The first thing you need to determine is how much water you want to store. One person needs a minimum of 1 gallon per day, and that's more if they're exerting themselves or if it's very hot. Now, I know that your household is just you, your wife, and your dog, and Dices is a big dog, so she's going to count as a full person. So, how many days of water do you want?
I proposed 30 days, but the wife says 10 days and no water, and I'm out.
All right, 10 days. I suggest you try to get your hands on 2 55-gallon drums, and that will give you about 3.5 gallons per person per day for 10 days, which is actually pretty luxurious, but I think you'll appreciate it during the summer when it's hot, and especially if you're having to do a lot of work. Now, if space is an issue, you could get by with just one drum, and that'll give you about 1.8 gallons per person per day for those 10 days. Now, I asked around, and apparently there's a fellow near where you live who is selling food-grade 55-gallon drums for $15 each, and that's a heck of a deal, so I suggest you go get a few. You'll want a siphon and a pump for that, and I still recommend a good filtration system of some kind because bugs, dust, rust, and other contaminants will likely get into the water no matter your precautions. I've attached recommendations for each in the show notes. Now, the next question is, how portable do you want the thing to be? Water is heavy, so you don't want to carry it if you don't have to, but storing water in the garage means you either put the water there in the first place, likely by a garden hose, or you divert the gutters into the garage for catchment. I've attached a link to a PDF in the show notes about how to set up a rain catch barrel. If you do go this route, you're going to need to talk to your wife about drilling holes in the garage to allow the downspout to enter. The good part about having a barrel indoors is that you won't have to haul the water very far. Speaking of which, how do you plan to move that water?
Well, we currently have 2 jerry cans, 6 and 7 gallons. We don't need to flee from disaster, but we might need some portable storage.
Okay, before you or anyone else goes out to buy jerry cans for water, make sure you can move them when they're full. Water is very heavy, and 6 gallons of it weighs 50 pounds. 7 gallons is close to 60.
Well, my wife's 6 feet tall, and she has shoulders broader than mine. If I can carry it, she can carry it generally. She's the one who bought the 7-gallon tote. She bought it so she could change water in her fish tank.
All right, good to know. You seem all set then, but for other folks who may not be as tall or as strong, I recommend the Hydroller, which is an 8-gallon can that's configured in the shape of a hand truck with wheels on the bottom and a handle up top. It's only $26 on Amazon, has a great rating, and the combination of wheels and a fulcrum will make it a lot easier for folks to move.
These are great ideas, Aaron. I'll run them past my wife and find out what she'll let me get. Good talking with you, and I'll see you next week.
See you next week, Sean.
If you'd like to read more from Erin, check out her blog, lurkingrhythmically.blogspot.com.
Felons behaving badly. Young mom murdered on North Carolina playground was pregnant. More charges filed.
This must have been because your Guns on Playgrounds law, right?
Exactly. Guns on Playgrounds law. There was just I think it was last year, the year before, I can't remember when it was, but the law changed and allowed concealed handgun permit holders to carry physically on playgrounds. Dateline, Asheville, North Carolina. Asheville police say a woman who was found dead last week with her young son wounded nearby was pregnant at the time of the shooting. Police added charges against suspect. He's accused of killing Candace Elaine Pickens and trying to murder her young son, according to Asheville police. Suspect is now charged with first-degree murder of an unborn child after the medical examiner determined Friday that Pickens was pregnant at the time of her death. Suspect is already charged with first-degree murder, first-degree attempted murder, and child abuse resulting in serious bodily injury. A jogger found the body of Pickens and the injured child last Thursday morning in Asheville near a school. Police say suspect left North Carolina and traveled to Columbus, Ohio after the shootings. Columbus police found suspect and arrested him that night. He remains in Ohio on Monday, awaiting extradition back to North Carolina. One of the stories, not this one, but a previous story where they said that she was pregnant, said that the friends were saying that the person who murdered her because she refused to get an abortion. Nice guy.
Yeah, real nice guy.
So what sort of person do you think carries his concealed handgun on a playground and murders his girlfriend?
Well, you're just your typical guy who's gone through all the background checks and the training and has his pistol purchase permit and all that Wonderful.
Concealed handgun permit.
Yeah. We just
Right.
need to ban all that stuff because that causes violence.
Right? If they'd have just put up a sign that says no handguns allowed on this playground, all of us would have stopped, right?
Right.
Resisting officer, misdemeanor, class 2. 2 counts, communicating threats, misdemeanor, class 1. Drug paraphernalia, use possess, misdemeanor, class 1. Robbery with a dangerous weapon, attempted, felon, class D.
Yeah. Nice guy.
Just exactly who we thought he was. Nikki is on assignment and will return next week. In the meantime, let's talk about iTunes reviews, law of self-defense books, and how you can use one to get the other. You've got one more week to get your iTunes reviews in. Everyone who reviews the show between April 24th and the end of May will be eligible to win their very own copy of Andrew Branca's Law of Self-Defense 3rd edition, signed by Andrew Branca himself. That is my very own copy right there. I'm very proud of it. Signed by Andrew Branca. Mine is copy number 6. Yours could be copy number 70.
Ooh.
I paid for the copy already, including shipping, so all you have to do is go to iTunes, click on the number of stars you believe we deserve, click on the button Write a Review, and tell us what you think. Here are some recent reviews from Andrew Branca himself. Sean and crew do great work. This is among the top 5 gun podcasts I listen to consistently. You'd be a fool not to give them a shot, pun intended.
Ba-dum-tsh. From another user who apparently has some sort of Japanese username that I cannot pronounce. I love the show, especially how it's broken up into smaller sections, making it easy to grab a quick 10 to 15 minute prep or tech tip on my lunch break. And as one of the, quote, 3 listeners that don't know, unquote, from the last episode, that knowledge has no negative impact on my view of this amazing product. I hope you all continue the great work.
And Shimabakuro85, I took a screenshot of that and I sent it to Aaron at the NRA show, and Aaron gave that a big heart and a thumbs up. It made her whole day. From iTunes, use my iTunes ID, which I think is a great idea and also a good handle. Great information in this podcast. Tips on inexpensive, sensible prepping, discussions of foreign policy, tips on tech we use every day, and digging into stories where news stories get firearms stuff wrong. Listen to this every week. You'll love it.
And from But I Am a Thinker, just like the name promises, this show is a compilation of segments from around the gun blogosphere. As a result, the segments are well designed with interesting content from a regular panel of contributors. In addition, the show is well produced with great audio quality.
What was that last bit again?
With great audio quality.
I love that bit. That's my favorite part right there.
I knew it would be your favorite part.
I'm glad somebody notices. I worked so hard at that. When I bought the book, Andrew said that it was number 70 out of the first 100 printed. I think he got like a couple of boxes that were like his to sell and give away, and he numbered them specifically. And the book that you're going to get is number 70. Once the winner is randomly selected and contacts me, I will send your email to Andrew, and he will ship you the book personally autographed. So remember, it's not just a book, it's also great legal information. If you study it well, it might just keep you out of prison. Plug of the week, the Eureka Timberline SQ2XT tent. You're thinking, why is Sean plugging a tent?
Sean used to camp a lot.
No, he doesn't.
Well, I mean, camping for certain values of the word camping.
You know, the last time I was in a tent that wasn't this pup tent thing that I was sleeping in this weekend was a 16-foot round canvas tent that had carpet and a queen-size bed in it.
Right, that's like camping.
Yeah, that's my style of camping, be honest. I love camping like that. Well, I sold that because I no longer am in the SCA and I don't do medieval reenactment anymore. So I sold the tent to somebody who's going to love it and really enjoy that style of camping. And when I went to this gun school, which we'll get to in the J block, we'll talk about the gun school itself, I had to camp. I probably, given that the weather was pretty bad, I probably should have driven the hour and a half and stayed at my parents' house both nights, like I did like Sunday night, and I drove home Monday, but I didn't. More fool me. But I stayed in this little bitty pup tent that I had owned. Okay, I bought this pup tent when I was engaged to somebody who is not my wife.
So you're a polygamist?
I have been married for 9.5 years. So how old is this tent? This tent has been out of its bag a total of 3 times since I purchased it. Okay, the tent is like 12 years old. It's been in its bag for like 12 years, plus however long it was in there before I owned it. I pulled it out. I set it up in my living room, looked at it. It looked fine. Packed it back up, threw it in the car, took it up, set it up in the dark in the headlights, slept in it. It was fine. Rained on me, snowed on me.
I'm sorry, it snowed?
It snowed.
It snowed.
It snowed.
It's May.
Snow didn't stick, but it snowed. Kind of sleeted. It was pretty bad. Did that tent leak? No, it did not. What kind of people make tents that survive 12 years of neglect, living in an attic inside literally like this bicycle trailer? Like this tent has been ignored for 12 years. A trailer that goes on the back of a bicycle, not a trailer to put your bicycle in that goes on your car. This tent has been ignored for 12 years and it is still waterproof. It is in still fantastic condition. This tent is awesome. Now, the tent that I have is the Timber Light, which apparently they don't make anymore. So the closest tent that they have now is the Timber Line, which is a slightly heavier, probably slightly more durable version than the Timber Light, which was the ultralight backpacker version of the Timber Line backpacker tent. It's a 2-man tent. They make a 4-man tent. If you decide what you really want is a 4-man version, click on that link. Look on Amazon for the 4x version of it and buy that one. It's another $50 maybe. Fantastic little tent. It even comes with its own little vestibule. So instead of just being the stuff inside the tent, you can be inside the tent and you have the little triangle part in front of the door of the tent that's covered.
Mm-hmm.
You can put your boots there. If you have a backpack, you can put your backpack there. And you don't have to find a little spot for it inside your tent and fight for space inside your tent. You can put it outside the door. Don't have to bring your muddy boots inside your tent, get them all over your sleeping bag. It's pretty cool. My muddy boots stayed in the vestibule. And there's no floor in the vestibule. So if you leave it open slightly, you can even put your stove there and cook there. Now, of course, be very careful to leave it open so that you're not burning up all your oxygen.
That'd be bad.
Right. Don't be an idiot.
That would be bad.
Follow the safety precautions. But it is a fantastic little tent. And I still can't believe that after 12 years, I've had this stupid tent and abused it by, really, it's been wrapped up in a bag all this time and ignored. I pull it out. It's almost a no-brainer to set up. I mean, just put a couple of sticks together and plug them into a couple of plastic bits and hook them together and boom, it's set.
Cool.
And it is waterproof. It survived. Literally, it snowed on it. It rained on it. It was cold. It was windy. It was awful. I'll get into that when we talk about gun school itself, but it was some terrible conditions and I was perfectly fine inside the tent. So if you need a tent, not too heavy, 2-man tent, space for your stuff, you can carry it around. If you need a 4-man tent, they make a 4-man tent. Eureka Timberline SQ 2XT tent. There's a link for it in the show notes. So we've all seen those pink guns in the gun case. Do women really like them? Beth Alcazar is here to tell us all about them. I know Mother's Day has come and gone, but I've seen a lot of posts about women and firearms, and specifically about women and pink firearms. Is that still a thing? Do women really love pink guns?
Well, I would say that just about any woman who has even a remote interest in firearms has likely come across a pink gun or two or more. In my years of shooting and working in the firearms industry, I've seen countless colorful selections in all shapes, sizes, models, and manufacturers. And while some ladies absolutely love these guns, others openly despise them.
What's not to like about a pink gun?
In many cases, it's not the guns themselves that women dislike. They actually hate what these pastel models represent, that quote-unquote pink it and shrink it mentality that used to dominate the firearms industry when it came to including women. Gun manufacturers, retailers, and even industry leaders fell for the idea that to encourage women to get involved in shooting sports and in personal defense, they just needed to have more options that were smaller, pinker, and supposedly more feminine. In fact, the color pink was the most often used go-to solution, and many women did not hold this decision in high regard, especially when they went to purchase a gun for themselves and they were immediately shown the pink .22s. Of course, many things have changed over the last decade, and while not everyone believes that the color pink will win over the hearts of women, there are still some people who are stuck on this thought. Of course, I'll even admit that in the very beginning, I was a bit against colored guns, especially pink ones, because I felt that gun manufacturers weren't really serious about women's real wants and needs. Just throwing the color pink on a firearm does not solve any issues or concerns for my everyday carry gun. But as I grew more comfortable and confident with firearms, and as my gun collection grew, I found that I was drawn to some of the prettier, more girly models. And now I even have some myself, such as the not at all pink Kimber Sapphire and the Kimber Onyx.
Besides the pink it and shrink it issues, why else would ladies not like pink firearms?
Another reason some ladies sneer at or even steer away from pink or other colored guns is that they don't always look real enough. There's definitely a seriousness to selecting a self-protection handgun, and the glittery grips or the Hello Kitty accents don't always fit the bill. In addition, as a parent, I always have to think carefully about the firearms in my own household, which is a home with 3 kids. It's difficult enough to train children to stay away from and to respect firearms, but when the guns are cute, colorful, or even designed to look like something else, like the real Glock that now resembles a Nintendo Duck Hunt video game zapper, parents may have to make some tougher decisions and draw some clearer lines. For my husband and me, in addition to telling our children not to touch guns and to let us or another adult know if they ever discover one somewhere, we've decided to teach our children every gun is real and every gun is loaded. As we all know, in today's day and age, real guns may look fake and fake guns may look real. And when it comes to my children's safety, I want to be sure I've got all the angles covered.
Okay, I get it. Pink guns are bad.
No, not necessarily bad. On the other side of the conversation, a lot of women love the idea of pink guns because they're excited about the chance to customize and personalize their firearms. They might not necessarily choose the color pink, but they love selecting the firearm that works best for them, and having that special color, look, or design might just be the icing on the cake. There's nothing wrong with liking your gun, or with choosing a gun you like, for that matter.
But what if a woman finds a pretty gun that she wants to buy?
That is A-okay. Honestly, I just hope women are making wise, carefully calculated selections when it comes to personal protection handguns, and that they're not picking one out simply because they like the way it looks. As I told my best friend who is new to firearms, you shouldn't select a carry gun just because you think it's cute. But of course, if you want that AR-15 in Tiffany blue,
Or purple.
yeah, sure, if you want whatever gun in whatever color just because, then why not? All in all, women may always have a bit of a love-hate relationship with the pink, glamorous, or girly guns. But much like the saying goes, don't judge a book by its cover, and don't judge a gun or its owner by its cover either.
All right, Beth. It was good to talk with you. I'll see you again next week.
Thanks, Sean. Talk to y'all next week. And as always, stay safe and be well armed.
You can read more from Beth at usconcealedcarry.com/blog and click on Pacifiers and Peacemakers in the left sidebar.
Fun with headlines.
I really like what they've done with this one. Lab tests find human and rat DNA in burgers.
Oh, wow. Sinclair Lewis, The Jungle.
Single-handedly kicked off the vegetarian movement.
Did he?
I don't know. We can blame him for it, right?
Sure, why not, you know?
That was the headline, and I just knew, looking at that it was going to be, well, just like that. A recent analysis of burger products found a few offensive extras like rat DNA and human DNA. Clear Labs released the results of its most recent test that analyzed 258 samples of ground meat, frozen patties, fast food burger products, and veggie burger products from 79 brands and 22 retailers. Clear Labs uses high-tech testing to screen food to see if the food actually contains what is listed on its packaging. The food test screened for substituted ingredients, contamination, gluten, toxic fungi and plants, other allergens, and missing ingredients. The company also examines food to see if it contains the same amount of nutrients that is listed on its packaging. So far, so good, right?
Sounds normal, okay.
The results of Clear Labs' hamburger report netted some disturbing results for carnivores and vegetarians. Of the 258 samples, in 2 cases, meat was found in vegetarian products.
Oh no!
There were no black beans in one black bean burger that was tested.
Okay.
The lab found 3 cases of rat DNA.
Ugh.
Unpleasant, but not considered harmful.
Okay.
The lab found 1 case of human DNA. Unpleasant,
Ugh.
but not considered harmful. What's going on here? So I'm going to skip down a little bit because then it starts reading like a press release for Clear Labs. The low incidence of hygienic issues surfaced by our study is a testament to the burger industry as a whole and the stringent protocols for safe food handling. As noted by the FDA, certain low levels of contamination are acceptable, said Clear Labs in the report. Human DNA was found in one frozen vegetarian burger sample.
Wait a minute. A vegetarian burger had human DNA in it?
Yes.
They have vegetarian humans?
Did
somebody cut off his finger while he was chopping up a carrot or something?
The test cannot tell the exact source of the DNA. However, Clear Labs said it most likely came from hair, skin, or a fingernail that was accidentally mixed in to a veggie burger.
This is hardly Sinclair Lewis in the jungle, isn't it?
Yeah. Rat DNA was found in 3 samples, a fast food burger, a ground meat sample, and a vegetarian burger, again with the vegetarians and the meat. Clear Labs said that human and rat DNA is unpleasant, but it is unlikely that it is harmful to human health. So, headline, human and rat DNA found in burgers. Actual report,
Okay, so what they're saying is that we've advanced to the point that we can find trace amounts of pretty much anything anywhere?
Pretty much, yeah.
Good to know. In his last segment with us before Baron comes back, Silicon Graybeard gives us a great introduction to getting started in electronics as a hobby. In
Tech Tips, Tech Tips, Tech Tips.
You are damaging my calm.
Tech Tips with Silicon Graybeard.
So Sig, what do you got for us this week?
Well, this week I had an email from a listener who wanted to know a bit about getting started in electronics. Kind of the how do I get started in electronics as a hobby, maybe building things or learning more about how things work. I don't know if folks really understand this, but the world of electronics is very, very big. In the time we have, I can't do anything but the broadest of introductions. More so than ever, lots of links in the show notes this time. To begin with, electronics is broadly divided into 2 areas. Digital electronics, which just means the circuits are based on 2 voltage levels, and analog electronics, which means the circuits are based on continuously varying levels. The lines between these kinds of systems are blurry, and they're getting more blurry all the time. Most of what you see around you really has both analog and digital portions. A classic example of an analog system would be something like an electric guitar amplifier, while a digital system would be your computer tablet or your phone. A guitar amplifier takes in low voltages coming out of the guitar pickups, and it turns them into the bigger, wall-shaking, arena-filling powers that the performers need. The sounds that come out of the speaker may be just the guitar tones themselves. More likely, they're going to be created by analog circuits that distort or time shift or do other tricks to the sound. A guitar amplifier can also be digital, or at least big portions of it can be. Those sounds can be the result of really complex digital processing, converting the low-level voltages out of the guitar into pure numbers, running incredible amounts of processing on them, which is to say pure math, and then turning it back into an analog voltage and then making it loud. It helps to narrow down the area you're trying to learn. There's nothing wrong with trying to learn everything. There are a few companies that provide lots of little circuit boards to build and experiment with. They also have lots of general tutorials to read and lots of opportunities to learn. Both are listed in the show notes. They're called SparkFun and Adafruit. You'll need to learn how to solder, which is done with low wattage soldering irons, and you'll need some simple test equipment to measure voltages, check if circuits are connected properly, lots of little things like that. You'll need some hand tools, small wire cutters, needle nose pliers, tweezers, wire strippers. Single board computers are very popular these days for all sorts of general uses, from being an actual computer with a browser and email and everything you're used to uses that involve controlling lights or other things. The 2 big names are Raspberry Pi, currently at version 3, and Arduino. A Raspberry Pi 3 is a real miniature computer. It has built-in Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, an Ethernet port, HDMI video, USB ports, and while it doesn't have much memory, only 1 gigabyte on board, it takes SD cards that act like a mini hard drive. These are aimed at teaching coding and software, although they're used in all sorts of games and other projects as a controller. A Pi will actually run Windows 10, which you'll probably be happier running Linux on it. with a distribution optimized for Pi. You can get started with it for $35 if you don't get a case. Arduinos come in more flavors, but aren't really aimed at being just like a computer. They're more aimed at controlling things. They sell a beginner's kit that includes 15 different projects and the parts to make them for $100. By all means, look at both sites. There are many other single-board computers aimed at various uses. More information in the show notes with a link that goes to an article on my blog. When I was a kid, one of the popular ways to learn this was an experimenter's kit that contained a lot of individual components and circuit diagrams for various experiments to hook up. These are still made in various forms. Some require you to cut and strip wire to run between terminals, while some just allow parts to snap in place. These range from fairly simple and low cost to rather involved, including an Arduino processor, which ties back to the single-board computers. As a retired engineer, I have to say I learned the most about electronics and how things really work before I started studying it in school by reading ham radio books and magazines. College textbooks are written to impress college professors who buy them, not to get knowledge across to students. They use tons of math, and it's just not needed as much as they use it. Ham radio authors are trying to help out a fellow hobbyist who happens to know less than they do. That was always my mindset when I wrote a few articles for the ham radio magazines. The American Radio Relay League publishes literally tons of books that are useful, and there are other publishers as well. Best known of these books is the ARRL Handbook, which was revised pretty much every year. While the year-to-year changes are small, the decade-to-decade changes are noticeable. Basic electronics doesn't change, but the components do. If you can find a used handbook on eBay or someplace, anything dated in the past 10 years will probably help you learn a lot. The ARRL Handbook is very gentle on math. If they have any, it's because it's useful to know. Finally, you can learn useful things with circuit simulation programs. The industry standard is a program called SPICE, which stands for Simulation Program with Integrated Circuit Emphasis, originated at the University of California at Berkeley. The basic guts of SPICE are open source, and there are many customized versions produced by different companies. One of the most commonly used versions is from an integrated circuit manufacturer named Linear Technology. They give it away to help customers use their product. It's called LT SPICE. There are forums online that can help you get started, and while it's aimed at professionals, college students routinely use SPICE, and anyone who knows schematic symbols can use it. There's an unfortunate truth here. Computer simulations can and will lie to you. We always considered simulation as the first step to knowing a circuit would work. If the simulation works and the circuit doesn't, the circuit is right. If the simulation can tell you what the circuit will do, and then you can go out and watch it do that in the lab, you've got a real design.
All right, Sig. It was great to have you sit in for Baron while he was changing jobs. He'll be returning next week, but I know I speak for every one of the podcast members, as well as our listeners, when I say you've been a great guest contributor. Thanks very much for spending some time with us.
Well, thanks a lot, Sean. And just as a reminder, if you or anybody else has any questions, feel free to contact me at the email in the show notes or stop by and visit my blog.
All right, it was good to talk with you, and we'll see you again soon.
See you sometime.
You can read more from Silicon Graybeard at thesilicongraybeard.blogspot.com. That's Graybeard spelled Graybeard, or email questions directly to sigraybeard, one word, @gmail.com.
Adam, did you see that list of links in the show notes? All those cool kits and things you can get to learn about electronics?
Yeah, I'm thinking if I get my son started in electronics early, they'll never have enough money to get involved with drugs. Fun fact, I actually did get my nephew involved in electronics very early, and I'm actually buying him a Raspberry Pi 3 for his 12th birthday.
No drugs for him.
No drugs for him. Now, one thing I would like to mention, Silicon Graybeard did say that Windows 10 will run on a Raspberry Pi. That is somewhat true, but you're not going to be able to open up Internet Explorer or anything like that. It runs Windows 10 IoT version, which is a very basic kind of command line-ish thing.
Okay. Well, good to know. The J-Block, Safety Solutions Academy Critical Defensive Pistol Course. Spoiler alert, great class, lousy weather.
Well, you got to complain about something, right?
Yeah. Paul Carlson is the guy who teaches the class. Safety Solutions Academy podcast, note the name, He did a podcast on the Wednesday before the class itself saying, oh, looking forward to the first spring class. We're going to be able to do this without wearing jackets and gloves. It's going to be awesome. And then it was 52 degrees the first day and 42 degrees the next.
Awesome.
And it snowed the second day. It rained the first and the second day. Oh, God, it was terrible.
I would have died.
Oh, I nearly died. If he hadn't loaned me his jacket, because, I'm from North Carolina. It's the middle of May. I brought shorts. I didn't wear shorts, but I brought them because,
Right?
I'm freaking stupid. I thought I was going to need them. Obviously didn't check the weather, but I didn't bring my jacket. Didn't bring my holster.
You forgot your holster?
I actually forgot my holster. I have multiple holsters. I brought my spare holster, the one that's not the light-bearing holster. I have two identical holsters. One's designed for the gun when it has a light on it. One's designed for the gun when it doesn't have a light on it. I've been carrying the gun with a light on it for a long time. Well, I brought the one along in case I decided for some reason, to take the light off, or if the holster broke, or any number of things could possibly happen.
Like you forget your primary holster.
Like I forget my primary holster. So I took the light off the gun and I was good to go. What really actually hurt more than anything else was not bringing the double mag pouch.
Oh.
So I had the single mag pouch.
Yeah.
That was annoying. So I'm, pulling mags out of my pocket. Yeah, that sucked. Now, I come from training classes where it's sights at distance. Slow fire sights at distance. And I guess the polar opposite of this class is where I came from, the Tiger Swan class, where they start you out at 25 yards. Here you are. There's an NRA 25-yard timed and rapid fire target.
Right.
Now shoot at this target at 25 yards. And I remember the first time I stood at the 25-yard line at a Tiger Swan class and went, they've got to be freaking kidding me. I'm paying $225 to come to this class and bring in my own ammo for a one-day, 8-hour class. I can't even see that. I've never shot at 25 yards with a pistol in my life. There's no way I can hit this target. And I'm just going to spray bullets all over the countryside is basically what's going to happen here. By lunchtime, I'm shooting 10 out of 10 in the black. Very proud of myself. And then after lunch, they have you at 10 yards shooting into USPSA targets. So, oh, wow, look how close it is. This is so much easier.
Right.
But if they start you at 10 yards and then try to move you to 25, oh, wow, it's just not the same. Well, Safety Solutions Academy, Paul Carlson, what he does is he goes from the other direction. He starts you out at 5 yards maybe, and there's your target, start from low ready, bring your gun up into your line of sight, put it in the center of the target and pull the trigger. It's not point shooting in that you see your sights, but you're not taking a sight picture, hard front sight focus, super tight aim, trying to hit a very precise point. You're just trying to hit the area on a man-sized target where you would have an effect, because that's what you would need to do on a person at that range.
Right.
And you're not going to super hard aim at that range anyway, right?
Right.
Basically, his entire course sort of comes from a person named Lou Chiodo. I'm not sure I could even spell the guy's name. I think it's Chiodo, but I'm not sure. The guy is a former trainer, I believe it is, for the California Highway Patrol. And what the guy did is he took the California Highway Patrol sub 20% hits on target to greater than 90% hits on target when they had to shoot at somebody. That's actual data right there.
Right.
When you can actually hit the target that often, that tells me that you're having an effect in your training. That's actual training there. That's actual valuable training. So if what you're doing is taking people from, you can't hit them but 1 out of 5 times or less over a fairly large agency. The California Highway Patrol is a fairly big agency.
Right.
And now, you take it from, you're basically just not hitting anybody, to basically every time you pull out the gun and shoot somebody, you're going to hit them. That's pretty impressive. It comes from focusing on the target and bringing the gun into the target, into your sight line. What was very strange about it, though, was learning that where do you have to start really focusing on the sights to get that hit where you need it to be? At 3 yards, you don't need to focus on anything.
Right.
You just need to vaguely point it at the target, you're going to hit it. Any closer than 3 yards, you can touch it. 5 yards, it's not really that difficult. 7 yards, you start need to pay more attention. 10 yards, you need to take a sight picture. Small targets changes things.
Right.
How tightly do you need to focus on the sight? Where does that need to happen? And we spent the weekend basically finding that balance between speed and precision. How fast can you be? How precise do you need to be? What can you speed up? What can you slow down? And watching people find that for themselves and where that distance, how distance plays into it, how size of the target plays into it. It was very interesting seeing just how it all played out. And it was all done at distances that were all plausible for pistol combat, basically. I found it to be completely different and very, very mentally challenging because it was so different than what I was used to. It wasn't the type of shooting that I had done before. So it was very difficult for me to just say, oh, well, sure, I'll just go ahead and do this because it's not the way I was trained. And I didn't want to let go of what I had been trained and try to do what somebody else was doing because it was every possibility I was going to jack it up royally and look bad in front of people.
Right?
Have you had this problem?
Well, I started seeking out more training than I was doing when I looked around. I may have told this story on the podcast before, but I went to the NRA instructor training. And, after the first, 10 rounds or whatever, now I'm the only guy in the training class that isn't a paid shooter, right? Military, law enforcement, those kind of guys were the ones that were actually there as students. And then there was me, who's just,
this guy,
a shooter, right? I'm just a guy, right? So I look at my target and, after 10 rounds, and this was at 7 yards, 10 yards, something like that. And all of my rounds were in about a 2.5, 3-inch circle. And everybody else's were spread out 8 to 12 inches. It's like, okay, one of these things is not like the other. And what I realized was I was taking a lot longer to aim than everybody else. And I was being much more precise, but I was taking longer. And so that's actually when I started doing IDPA.
Mm-hmm.
I looked and I said, okay, so these are the professional shooters, people who really do try to train to defend their lives. And they're much less concerned about getting 2-inch accuracy than they are with, hitting the target quickly.
Right. The way the class is structured, so he keeps overloading you with things to do so that you have to stop thinking about what it is you're doing with the gun and just do that part on automatic while you think about what it is you're supposed to be doing, if that makes any sense. I'm not sure how to describe it exactly, but I watched it happen. There was a guy who was struggling really badly in class. He was there with his 14 or 16-year-old son. I think he was 14. And the both of them were supposed to be shooting 1911s, but the son showed up with a holster that was really for a cowboy gun and didn't cover the trigger guard.
Oh.
Yeah, that was not a good situation. So they found him a Glock, basically a Glock 17. It wasn't, but it was converted to a Glock 17. And he fired that. And Dad was shooting a full-size 1911. Dad was just getting beat up by this 1911. It was just not working for him. And he was putting too much thought into things. Paul just overloaded this guy's brain. I remember watching him this one time when I had a chance to just watch the guy shoot. And, boom, boom, boom. He just nailed his target. Just like he couldn't have shot any better at all.
Mm-hmm.
And it was because he was no longer thinking about what it was he was doing with the gun. He wasn't thinking about pulling the trigger. He wasn't thinking about aiming. He wasn't thinking about all this running the gun things. He was simply thinking about where he needed to move, what he needed to be shooting at, and the rest of the stuff was just on autopilot, and he was just nailing it. It was really interesting to see. And then the minute he was out of that and was back to thinking about pulling the trigger and working the gun, it just went sideways again. And it was a really interesting demonstration of how overthinking what you're doing just destroys your ability to shoot. And we talked about that after the class. It was a very, very, very good class, completely out of my ordinary shooting. It's not what I would have done myself, right? It was funny. There was a place where I would stand and had to shoot fast without aiming too awful much, where I hated it. And then if I stepped back about 5 steps, and I shot at smaller targets, I had to aim. And that was my wheelhouse right there. And that was where I needed to be right there. And I was happy because now I had to take time to aim. And that was what I was good at.
Right.
And the absolute worst was there were 3 lines on the ground, and there was a front, a middle, and a back. And he would say front, middle, and back. And then when he wanted you to shoot, he'd say, up. There's a problem with this. I don't know where it happened, but at some point in my career, I think it might have been in the military, it might have been somewhere else. Front
means the
also
threat is in
means
front of you.
action front,
Yeah.
threat front, and I had nowhere near enough sleep, and I was way overloaded brain-wise, and I'm standing in the middle line, and the very first thing he says is, front! And everybody on the line, there's 4 of us, the other 3 people start stepping out smartly to the front line, and I snatch for my cover garment and have my handgun out and on target. I'm ready to shoot. I don't know how he stopped me, and he's stop, and I freeze. I am like 3 pounds of pressure on a 4-pound trigger.
Yeah.
I am gonna nail this target. I have it I'm gonna hammer this target. And he's like, Sean, what did I say? And I scream, front, because I knew what he said. He said front.
Right.
And then I'm like, oh. And I holster up. And so we go back to the drill, right? And we keep going. And then in the middle of the drill, he's like, front. And I pull it out and I'm, stop. I'm like, I need off this line. And I'm like, I'm done. I'm out. I'm off the line.
It's like, I'm just going to go sit down now.
Yeah. There's once might be funny, twice ain't funny anymore.
Yeah.
So.
It's like, I'm just going to go over here before I hurt somebody.
Yeah. Yeah. And he has a very good policy towards, ridiculous safety issues. Like, you're pointing your gun at people.
Right.
Not going to happen.
Right.
Right. But like mental malfunctions like that, you're going to stick around until you get it right. And there were a number of, you're going to do dumb things because he's going to mentally overload you.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a fantastic class. And I learned a huge, huge amount in the class. Some of it even related to guns and shooting. A lot of it related to don't edit a podcast until 1 o'clock in the morning and then think that you're going to have any mental powers left the next day.
Right.
Right. Good idea, Sean. Not
Right.
a good idea. It was pretty tough to deal with. The weather conditions were difficult. And you know what? That whole, if it ain't raining, it ain't training, shut up. There's conditions you just cannot deal with. It was a horrible, but we did the best we could.
Right.
I would like to be in a position where I could go back and take his June class and like feel like I could do it right. If there was a way, it'd be awesome. I just, couldn't. Now, if you haven't listened to the previous podcast, then you don't know, and you probably should listen to the previous podcast because we did record about an hour's. It ended up being about 45 minutes to 50 minutes worth with Paul and another guy that was there, Ben from Real Defense. And if you listen to that, you'll know that Paul is giving us a discount code. If you want to take his class, class is normally $525 for the 2-day critical defensive handgun course. But if you use discount code VARIETY at checkout, you'll get 15% off, which is a considerable discount. That works out to $78.75 off his class. And it is absolutely worth it. I wish I could take it again. If I get a chance, I will take it again. The class is up kind of in between Akron and Cleveland.
All right.
And it's at a off-road park.
Ooh.
It's really nice. Southington Hunt Club. It's a really great place. There is a link in the show notes. There's an address in the show notes. Check it out. But it's in Ohio. It is a really nice place. If you're going to camp, it costs you $20 a night to stay there. If you're not going to camp, I'm not sure where you would stay. You can't stay at my parents' house. I can stay at my parents' house. You can't stay at my parents' house. Actually, Adam, you might be able to stay at my parents' house. I'd give them the good word. They'd probably let you stay. The rest of you guys are on your own. But $78.75 off, that's not bad. And the class, absolutely worth it. Be prepared for it to be completely different than any firearms class you have ever taken. And pro tip, make sure your gun is reliable, because you are going to find out every single thing that is wrong with all of your gear, because you are going to run it hard. And if it's not perfect, you're going to find out. We got to watch everything that could go wrong, go wrong.
Well, good. That's kind of what you want to have happen in training and not at the MAPCO.
Yeah. The guy with the 1911 and the son who was supposed to have the 1911 are going to have Glocks in the next month.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
Yeah. And now a word from our sponsor. You know what will happen. If you ever have to defend yourself, you're going to end up in handcuffs. Are you trained to win the fight after the fight? Sure, you can draw, aim, and put 2 in the 10 ring, but have you learned your legal self-defense? Do you know the law? Go to lawofselfdefense.com/variety to sign up for your legal self-defense class. Each class is tailored to the laws in your state. Attorney Andrew Branco will teach you the law, not just what the law says, but what the judge's legal opinions say, what the jury instructions say. Sure, you could risk spending the rest of your life in prison because you followed the advice of some gun store counter jockey, or you could spend the day with the man who literally wrote the book on the law of self-defense. Carry a gun so you're hard to kill. Know the law so you're hard to convict. Go to lawofselfdefense.com/variety to sign up for a legal self-defense class in your state. And make sure to use discount code VARIETY at checkout to receive 10% off. So where can you take a live, in-person, state-specific law of self-defense seminar?
August 7th, 2016 at Triangle Shooting Academy in Raleigh, North Carolina.
August 13th at Threat Dynamics in Sherwood, Oregon.
August 20th at Nashville Armory in Nashville, Tennessee.
September 10th at CMP Talladega Marksmanship Park, Talladega, Alabama.
October 1st at the Hampton Inn in Bensalem, Pennsylvania.
And October 16th at the Butterfield Shooting Range in Las Cruces, New Mexico.
Check lawofselfdefense.com for which states these classes cover and to see when more classes are offered. Or email him and ask him to teach a class in your area.
But most importantly, when you sign up, make sure to use discount code VARIETY at checkout to save 10%.
This podcast runs on your donations. Go to GunBlog VarietyCast.com and click on the donate or the subscribe button in the right sidebar. You can make a one-time donation of any amount or subscribe for as little as $2 a month. That doesn't sound like much, but we pay our server costs monthly, and a little help from you is a big help to us.
And I'd like to thank our new subscriber this month. That money is definitely going to help us out. And if you are not subscribed yet to us, please look in the right sidebar, click on the subscribe button, donate any amount you feel, or subscribe for as little as $2 a month, and we will put that money to good use. I've never understood how having sex without birth control qualifies liberal women to have opinions about our civil rights. But it appears that the media is gathering another group of mothers to wage war against guns, war against gun violence. Weird has the audio, and as usual, acerbic commentary in
This Week in Anti-Gun Nuttery.
Well, hey, Weird, what do you got for me this week?
So this week I found a YouTube channel called Women in the World, featuring a video called Mothers Waging War Against Gun Violence. It was a panel of 4 women, 3 of them African American, and 3 of them who had lost a child to gun violence.
One of these things is not like the others. One of these things doesn't belong.
The woman who wasn't a mother was a Democrat running for Cook County, Illinois state attorney. The white woman was Brady campaign's own Sandy Phillips. The same Sandy Phillips we talked about in episode 83. So the other moms lost their children to standard street crime. One boy was gunned down here in Boston by gang members who mistook him for a rival gangman. To get a further feel of how life plays out in these gang-controlled neighborhoods, the boy charged never even made it to trial because someone went and murdered him. The other was killed in an argument by a violent career criminal with a lengthy rap sheet. Really, none of these women could probably be considered friendly to the right to keep and bear arms. But they really seem more focused on violent crime. Not Sandy Phillips. She's focused on guns.
We're going to break this down into a couple of different themes. We're going to start with the idea of access to guns. And Sandy, I want to start with you. What happened to Jesse? Tell us about it. And also tell us about the trail that the gun took to that movie theater.
Happy to. What he didn't know, and we didn't find out until a few weeks later, was that she had been shot 6 times with a .223, which is military-grade ammunition, steel-tipped, that is designed to do the most damage not only to the body, but to cars, walls, steel.
Armor-piercing bullets.
Basically, yes. And he was able to amass 4,000 rounds of ammunition with a click of a mouse. So he didn't have to provide any ID. He didn't have to go through a background check. So that means that anyone in our country or anyone visiting can do the same thing.
I put a break between those 2 clips because there's just a lot of details on how her daughter came to be at the Batman premiere in Aurora, Colorado, which isn't germane to this conversation. Still, notice how the moderator is talking about access to guns and the path the gun took. Yet that isn't discussed. Really, no paths are discussed in her response because that isn't useful to her agenda. What you're going to see is Sandy's affinity for telling blatant lies. Of course, we know that 223 Remington is actually the civilian cartridge. And I haven't read anything about what brands of ammo the killer bought, but steel tip sounds a lot like M885 green tip ammo, which isn't armor piercing and really isn't going to do the most damage to people when compared to hunting or defensive ammo. But it sounds good. He did buy 4,000 rounds, but he only fired 65 rounds of rifle ammo, plus 6 from his shotgun and 5 from his pistol. We all know the rifle was bought legally from a gun shop with a required background check, and the ammo was legally sold as well.
I read an article about you, Sandy, and the headline was, "We lost our daughter to a mass shooter and now owe $203,000 to his ammo dealer."
Yes.
Explain that headline.
Well, we sued the manufacturer, not for money, but we sued to have them change their business practices. We wanted them to start providing background checks, or at least, at the very minimum, say, give me your ID, prove to me that you are who you say you are, and that this ammo is going to the same address that your billing address. And they didn't want to do that because of PLACA. They don't have to do that. So,
and PLACA, just so we know, is Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms?
Yeah, it sounds like a great law, but it's not. And it actually protects gun manufacturers and ammo dealers and tear gas dealers and all of that. So the judge on the first motion dismissed the case and left us with originally $264,000, but he was kind enough to reduce it to $203,000.
And you had to pay the ammo company.
Well, we haven't, and we won't.
Right.
She's ordered by a court of law to pay for the frivolous lawsuit she was party to, and she's refusing to pay it, and laughing about it, and the crowd is cheering her on. Can you imagine anybody else shirking a court order like that and getting the same response? And yes, the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act protected Lucky Gunner, because her lawsuit was a frivolous bullying tactic, and the alleged changes she claims to support would have made no difference in this case. In reality, the change she wanted was to put Lucky Gunner out of business and let the other ammo dealers know, you're next.
First of all, there are 300 million guns out in America. So the horse has left the barn. So when we hear politicians say, oh, everybody needs to be armed, which is crazy, we have politicians that say, oh, we need a ban on assault rifles. That's not going to happen. It's not practical. But we can put laws into place and tighten laws that exist so we don't have the loopholes that we currently have. Certainly passing expanded background checks on every single gun sold in America.
And we're talking about federal laws. You can applaud if you feel like it.
Interesting how everyone should be armed, which nobody is actually saying is crazy. But an assault weapons ban, which she openly supports, just isn't going to happen. Keep in mind, she works for the Brady campaign. The two biggest achievements of the Brady campaign are the Brady bill and the original 1994 Clinton assault weapons ban that even now Hillary is lamenting the demise of.
We're going to do whatever we can. I was proud when my husband took them out and we were able to ban assault weapons, but he had to put a sunset on. So 10 years later, of course, Bush wouldn't agree to reinstate them. We've got to go after this.
Back to the moms. We must note that when Sandy Phillips is talking about universal background checks, she's on stage with a woman from Boston and a woman from Chicago, both in states with universal background checks, and both in cities with criminal gangs that don't give a damn. And the dead sons were shot with guns illegally acquired. And by illegally, I mean several serious laws, not just one. But one more would somehow help? But those are state laws, not federal.
You want to talk about federal laws because if different states have different laws, there's an iron pipeline.
There is, from Florida, who has very weak laws, in Georgia, right up the whole East Coast, all the way into Toronto. For Chicago, you've got them coming in from Indiana. You actually have college students who are buying guns and selling them so they can pay off their tuition. This is what we've created in America.
We've covered this countless times. The iron pipeline doesn't exist. You know what else doesn't exist? Her alleged college students running guns to pay for school. You'd think such a sexy story would warrant a headline or two. Except even Google hasn't heard of such a college student, let alone the multiples that she implies.
Changing the loopholes on the internet and being able to buy guns on Facebook and Craigslist and all these other, in the back of a truck. Until we start tightening those up, we're destined to repeat ourselves.
At this point, she's just throwing crap at the wall to see what will stick. Gotta love that out of the back of a truck line, too. It would appear that the anti-gunners read each other's talking points. Also, if these antis are so concerned about people trafficking guns out of car trunks and the back of box trucks, they need to cut the nonsense with calling for new laws and carry their backsides down to Dot Ave and Southie and personally discuss this issue with Ice Dog and Ray Ray, the guys who are actually selling the guns illegally. But it's easier to hassle law-abiding gun owners and FFLs and ammo sellers because we keep regular hours and we aren't likely to shoot at them. She's really demonstrating herself to be a pathological liar, and a sociopath who's willing to do hundreds of thousands of dollars of damage to a law-abiding company simply because she doesn't like them, and ignoring when the courts rule she must pay for the damages she's done. The antis want us to shut up. We want them to keep talking.
All right, Weird. It was good to talk with you. I'll see you again next week.
See you next week, Sean.
In addition to appearing here, Weird is a regular host on the Squirrel Report and blogs at weirdworld.com. That's WEERD world.com. You know, I wonder if that audio clip of her saying, yeah, we're never going to pay, maybe that should wind up in Lucky Gunner's lawyer's hands.
I would make sure the judge heard that.
Yeah, because, you know, laughing at a judgment like that.
That's contempt of court.
He's probably not going to be real thrilled with that. If only we knew someone who knew someone.
Stuff that grinds my gears. Adam, why don't you go first this week?
So I keep all of my fun with headline stuff in Evernote.
Uh-huh.
And every single week I have to sign into Evernote and I check the box that says, keep me signed in for 30 days.
That doesn't sound right.
Every week I have to do that. Either it works for 30 days or it doesn't.
You've had a rough week if that's what you're complaining about.
Well, I have lots of other things that I could be complaining about, but that's like the thing that I'm going to pick right now.
Okay. Good for you.
How about you, Sean?
Me.
You piss off you?
Yeah, believe it or not.
Okay. Well, that's our show for the week.
Yeah. Remember how I said that I learned a lot of things at gun school and some of them had something to do with guns? And
yeah.
About a couple of days before gun school, I ended up having one of those talks with my wife.
Uh-oh.
You're married.
I am married.
You've had a talk with your wife, haven't you?
I've had lots of talks with my wife.
You know what happens when your wife says, we have to talk? It's never good, is it?
Well, what's going on?
Well, my wife had a problem with the way I was acting, and, well, let's just say that I didn't have a whole lot to say to defend myself.
Oh.
I was acting kind of like a jerk. And that was kind of spreading out all over the internet.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, were you being naughty on Facebook?
I was being a jerk on Facebook. I was being a jerk here, there, and everywhere. And I kind of had to think about it for a while. You know, you run into something, but you don't necessarily change directions when you run into the wall. You know, you have to think about it for a while.
Right.
And I watched an argument that happened at gun school that was unusual. Two people disagreed about something, and it was the instructor and it was a person in class. And rather than devolving into the you're wrong, I'm right, no, I'm right and you're wrong, it was this is why this is going to work, and explain to me what you're seeing. Okay, and let me explain to you why I think this is important. And it was a discussion, and it was respectful, and it was never push the other person away. It was never, I'm going to win at all costs. And more than that, what was really cool about it was when the other person left, and this was both of them, neither one of them had something bad to say about the other person behind that person's back. Because I talked to both of them, and they were exactly the same when the other person wasn't listening as they were in the other person's face. And having been given the discussion from the wife and then being given a better example among some other things that were going on, and having some discussion with the wife about the whole having my smartphone all the time and always being on the internet on my smartphone instead of, participating in like ordinary family life. I started to make a few changes, and I'm thinking that my life is a little bit better this week than it was the week before. So one of the things that I did this week that I actually didn't tell my wife about this. I think she may have noticed, but I don't know that she knows what's going on. Every time I've come to dinner, I've left my cell phone in the office.
Interesting.
I usually have it on me, but I've left it in the office. I did that when I came back from gun school. I went to my parents' house and I deliberately just parked my phone and didn't touch it and hung out with my parents and the friends of my parents who were over their house when I got there. And for an hour and a half, had a lovely time just hanging out with my parents and their friends and just interacting with actual people instead of like bits and bytes on the internet. And it was like, oh, this is pretty cool. This works pretty well. I should try this more often. So I'll do this at home and see how that works out. And I have made a concerted effort not to get into arguments with people on Facebook, and especially not get into arguments with third parties on second parties' walls. Apparently a big jerk maneuver, so I don't do that.
Yeah.
It was a case of I ran into a problem. The wife pointed that problem out. That kind of brought me up short. And then I saw a better example, and I'm like, I think I should apply that example. But it was one of those things that I was like, maybe this isn't going to work. So we'll see how this turns out. So you never know. It might work. So far, so good, I guess. Well, that's our show for the week.
Thanks again to Rob Allen for our music.
And Firearms Policy Coalition for their support.
And thank you for listening to the GunBlog VarietyCast.
Constructive criticism can be sent to Sean at SeanSorrentino.com.
And hate mail to WizardPC at GunsCarsTech.com.
If you're not already subscribed, subscribe in iTunes for all you Apple users.
Or in Google Play Music if you're an Android user.
And make sure to help us grow by sharing this podcast with your friends.
Show notes can be found at GunBlogVarietyCast.com/episode 92.
This is a URS production.